walking around London, there's all these just amazing old architecture, but I see it and I appreciate it for the romanticism of it, but I also know that things change, and it's more important, I think our survival is more important than efficient survival in the long run is more important than just, the aesthetic romanticism. So I think I would agree with my
Hi Peter, films are great. My name's James, I'm a researcher at Oxford University in environmental studies.
Okay.
And I also want to riff on this theme of efficiency, ask you a question about efficiency. It seems to me that the efficiency that is required to sort of bring about global sustainability and sort of equality for everybody, that's a function of sort of three things really. The resources we have available, the population of the planet, and the quality of life that we want. And until we've determined what those three things are, do you think there's a danger in saying things like efficiency at all costs, given that that could lead to a loss of certain cultural attributes like architecture that people appreciate in the here and now?
Well, efficiency at all costs, I think, is simply a general rule that, we could get to a point where the efficiency, that extra 1% of efficiency is not necessary. You don't have to go through just to get that little extra bit, because maybe things are so sustainable that there's such an ease already and this population is satisfied and it's not necessary. We go back to the third point you mentioned in that list that you had regarding where the needs are. Really, in effect, our needs should be related to what is possible with the internal structure, the inferential logic coming up from what I call natural law, based on what the Earth can support, based on what we're defined by the environment that we're born into. And we have to align with it. So the maximization of utility, if you will, this approach really defines our needs. And we really have no choice but to kind of fall in line with natural law. You know what I mean? People have a tendency to be very personal in their lives, personal in their views, thinking that they have some freedom of thought that somehow exceeds their reality. I'm sorry, that doesn't really work that way. We have to align with things, and our values should be derived. So it goes the other way around, is my point.
Yeah, as an environmentalist, I'm very sympathetic to that argument. So my point is that I think we could get to a stage where we can produce, where we don't have to be super efficient, where everything doesn't have to be around the facility.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I understand.
And so how do you determine that?
Well, that's what I just commented on, that extra 1%, or that extra 5%, or that extra 10%. I mean, it's not like it could be a stickler and go, well, we have to do all this and this and this. If things are working properly and they're sustainable and there's limited negative retroactions and everyone's happy, we don't have some kind of deep poverty here, or we don't have pollution here, or deforestation here, or peak oil here, or any kind of peak resource. If everything is in balance and it's being maintained, then it becomes kind of a moot issue. If it's working and everyone's satisfied, there's no reason to have to go to some crazy, extreme length of efficiency. Sure.
You hear me? Good. Yeah, I just want to say I've been successfully brainwashed by your movie. Thank you very much indeed. Job done. I want to say I think the film's amazing at dissecting the evils inherent in our money system, which are palatable and there for everyone to see. I also think it's a great advert for your resource-based economy. It looks a bit like utopia porn to me in some instances.
Excuse me, can you answer the question?
Yeah, sure. What I'm basically saying is I think the film's weak in terms of describing the transition from the place we're in now to the place that you're advertising. And that's the real problem that I have with it. I can't wait to be in that world, but how do we get there?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. That's why we're here. That's why there's an event tomorrow. That's why the Zeitgeist movement exists. There's only so much I as an individual and my conditioning, my temperament, and my intellectual capacity can say. I couldn't sit here and tell you how to, quote, change the world. That's going to come from another place. That's going to come from, well, first of all, it's going to be navigated dynamically by what I consider to be the collapse of civilization because of what's outlined in the film. You're going to have problems and pressures that are going to emerge. You're going to have people seeking solutions to override them. And the hopeful thing that will happen is that this type of direction is logically pulled through, as opposed to people falling back on some other outdated view. Critical mass, though, is really what I'm going for. In Zeitgeist Addendum, it started there, where I made that point about the need for critical mass. And if this film doesn't carry over into the activist angle, but in the Zeitgeist movement, I talked to extensive lengths about the need to get people together across the world. And once you have enough people, you begin to put pressure on the establishment. You begin to have, you begin to have economic conferences with scientists that are behind it that can show the complete redesign of North America. That show you can, boom, here it is. And you get other country leaders or whomever to start to think about it. And you, in my mind, you develop a parallel structure, a parallel group of people that want to do something completely different. And hopefully, again, the logic will pull through. And the timing will be such that it hits a tipping point, and the powers that be are willing to accept, or maybe will be forced to accept, based on the uprising and civil unrest and everything else that's happening, which I think will continue. That's how I see it, loosely speaking, a transition occur. But there's so many things that you really can't predict. But at the very base level, you have to get the world to want it. You have to get people across the world, across all borders, because this is a global concept, to want this.
Can I just say as well, it struck me that it wouldn't be this is the sort of thing that everybody has to sign up to in order for it to work, surely. If you're talking globally, well, what are you going to do with people that insist on being irrational?
Well, I think the term, the Amish exists today. The Amish have isolated communities. The Amish have chosen to live lifestyles. And there are many other, religiously oriented subcultures that live very, very differently than the modern capitalist, global society that we have now. So you can accommodate those things. If someone doesn't see the efficiency, if they're really against it, there's no reason that, that there's some animosity there. But they have to understand that if, 60% of the world population wants to live in a resource-based economy and 40% don't, well, you can only hope that a compromise can be made. But I think actually those statistics that I just mentioned are kind of inaccurate. More like 90% of the population wants to live, because you really do need global resource access, back to your first point. And then the other 10% can be supplied with what they need. But what would you do if you were the other 10%? And you're watching everyone live in a very nice, so I believe that they would come over to the other side to see the fruits of this. In fact, I have more respect for the Amish and these more simplistic subcultures than I do for this modern capitalist world that's hell-bent on destroying itself. So, see my point, it really comes down to where the stability is. And I think that in the education of anyone, they'll begin to reconcile that it's in their best interest to join a system that's actually sustainable and hopefully progressive and be willing to accept those changes.
About 4.5 weeks ago, my eldest son, sent me an email in to see this film we've just seen again. And since then, I've spent most of my time on the internet following things.
Steve, please. What's your question? Yeah.
All right.
Please.
Quick question.
Time for other people, yeah.
Very, very recently, the world has had some big things with yesterday in Japan and nuclear explosion this morning. And it struck me after watching Al Jazeera and now Democracy Now! How we have to develop that way. On the internet, there's been discussion amongst us lot about getting a city government. No, we need communication first, proper, to get some proper websites with.
Something that we can show the world what's capable is the intent. Building an isolated community, though, and shutting yourself off and saying, okay, we have our skills, that's not going to fly in the current climate. So I just want to reiterate that if anyone thinks that that's a solution. There's nowhere to hide anymore. It's either the world learns that its survival is contingent upon it learning to work together, or it continues its slow, grueling breakdown.
Darren? Pretty much agree with everything you just said there in terms of how the world's going to go. I've spoken to many, many people who read, who are intelligent, and a lot of them didn't know who you or even Jacques were. And he's been around for ages. So my question to you would be, obviously it would take a catastrophe to get to the point of change. What could you guys do more mainstream, i.e. Discovery Channel, to get this documentary out there, not amongst like this, but mainstream. I've spoken to so many people and they do not know what the Zeitgeist movement is.
Well, I consider, if you really think about it, it's definitely an infancy stage. If you compare our numbers and our reach with, by the way, no heavy monetary contributions, it's all volunteer and independent people doing this on their own accord, which is very powerful. But if you compare ourselves to other activist organizations, or what you want to call them, it took them much longer to achieve the audience and the group that we have. So I think in angle of progress, for what is really only about 2 years ultimately, I think it's quite effective and quite profound. I'm trying to get the documentary on the documentary film channel. I've had communication with various organizations to do whatever I can. And of course, anyone can show the film. I give the film essentially out. Any television station can basically show it as long as they don't exploit it. And I don't require any kind of money for it, which is quite an incentive for them because there is an audience and all they see is dollar signs and everything else. But
I guess there'll be a few company owners that have investments in certain places that really want these documents on.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I guess there'd be a lot of directors, company owners that are capitalists.
Well, that's all they want. This is the system we live in. That's what they see. They see dollar signs. So if they see an audience, that's just the sad reality of it, why they rationalize it. Unless you occasionally get somebody that's in the mainstream that really believes in it and they can slide it in, which does occasionally happen in certain contexts. But I think the progress is there. I'm doing the best I can. The movie was made in more of a, quote, high-budget kind of way with a much bigger spread to try to appeal to a diverse group as possible. So I'm doing the best that I can. It's really just up to everybody to continue.
So what could we do as individuals? I mean, I work as a recruitment consultant, effectively, is against all the things I'm watching here. but I've started to go into work feeling like, I don't really want to do this because it's all about money and profit. What does the average person just trying to get by?
Well, this is the complex reality. You have to walk a dual line if you believe in this type of direction, because you can't just throw everything down and assume it's going to happen tomorrow. You can't just disregard money and the future. It's paradoxical in the state of mind. So what I kind of tell people is you kind of have to wear the movement on your shoulder. You have to make it a part of your general life. You have to know that you have to submit to the system. If you have the option if you're in college, try to do something that has some type of social benefit. Don't do what I was forced to do, being advertising for a while. Don't try to stay away from all of the parasitic industries and things that really do nothing at all. And there's a number of them. Try to do something, in advanced, in programming, things that relate to design, computers. Computers obviously aren't going to stop in their progression and effect. And what we talk about here is very much based on the computational ability to manage the Earth resources correctly. So these are very important fields. So I would definitely recommend that as a general distinction. But to finish that point, just anyway, if you're frustrated, don't try to balance your life, as I try to do my best, between your basic survival and trying to promote something that you feel is important for your future and your family's future, your kids, obviously their future, and realize that it's just a very noble thing to promote in and of itself.
Maybe I'll come and work for you then as a salesman or something like that.